am Miss Anderson, and for my LSA session today I am doing some photography. Now obviously I'm not there with you, and I was really looking forward to doing this with you, so I decided to make a little video with some tips and tricks that I use with my iPhone that you can use today with our little session. Now generally I do use an iPhone. However, I am going to do my best to incorporate some tips and tricks using a Samsung device. Now, I'm not as good with Samsung or Android devices in terms of photography, so most of this will be for the use of an iPhone, but hopefully you can apply your knowledge as well. Now, one of the first things I want to show you are some settings that we can use on our phone in order to help us make some really top-notch photos. One of the first things you'll see is around my face, you'll see this grid that's going on right here. Now, that's something that I have set up with my phone. Some of you may have that set up as well, but it's something that I've set as part of my camera settings, and I'll explain to you why in a minute. But it's something that I find really, really helpful for composition of my photos. So I'm going to show you where to find that in your settings and how to make that a setting on your camera. All right, so if I go into my settings app, all right, which is here on my phone, you'll see that if I go back to my main settings, okay, this is my standard page, and if I scroll down here, you will see that there's an app for the camera. Now, if I open up this camera app here, okay, you're going to see a bunch of different settings, QR codes, videos, whatever. And right here where it says grid, I just want you, if it's toggled off like it is in this toggled off white, I just want you to switch it so it's on. Everything else can likely remain the same. And that is the first setting I would like you to add into your camera. Hi guys, I am going to show you now how to change your settings on an Android device to also have the grid lines. Now this is a Samsung tablet, but most Samsung software works the same across all devices, and other devices that are not Samsung, that are other Androids, you should be able to find a similar setting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the apps. I'm going to go to settings. Okay, on the side here, you'll see that there's a variety of settings there, and I'm just going to go in the one that's to applications. All right, now what you'll see here is I have this list, and I'm going to go to camera. Once I go to camera, you'll see that I already have this grid line toggle switched on. So you just want to make sure that that toggle is switched on so that you can have the best quality photos as you go around today outside. Alright guys, the next thing I want to show you is just some tips that you can use with your phone. Now the reason why I added the grid into my cell phone is actually a photography term called the rule of thirds. Now the rule of thirds, it's a little bit weird because we actually have 9 squares that are on the cube or the grid that you see here. Okay, but it's called the rule of thirds because it's divided into 3 chunks vertically as well as 3 chunks horizontally. Now, according to different studies and things like that, what we notice is when a person looks at an image, we tend to like images better or prefer images where we have a picture where there's the focal point of the image or the highlight of the image, the thing that you're really trying to capture. If that is in one of the cross sections, so for example, here, 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 or here, it makes the image more visually appealing. Okay, I also find that if I have a focal point in one of the 9 quadrants, okay, and if it's relatively close to these focal points, it also does the trick. Okay, now I generally like to follow that as a hint as I'm trying to compose a nice photo. Okay, another thing that I like to do when I'm taking photos with my iPhone is I will touch the screen. So you can't see my finger, but if I go close, I'm going to touch the screen, and that's going to be where my focus is generated. So my iPhone will automatically focus the lens on the thing that I'm touching on my touch screen. So for example, if I touch on my face, okay, it's going to focus on that part of my face. Now, if I want to focus on my nose, I can do the same. Now you'll notice that the lighting changes slightly when I touch different parts of my face. Okay, now the last thing that I want you to notice, and maybe you've tried this out, and maybe you have tested this with your own iPhone, but one of the things I want you to notice is if you touch a focus area, you can then increase or decrease the brightness by using the sliding toggle beside that focus point. So what you can see here is I'm making the image quite a bit darker by scrolling my thumb down, and right beside I will scroll it up to make it bright. Okay, so that will help you compose your photo. It helps you adjust what we call white balance in a photo, so how bright your photo really is. Okay, some other things that I like to use with my iPhone are the different flash settings. Generally, I turn my flash off. I find that flash impedes my photos, especially when if it's really dark and the flash really takes focus only on the front things in your viewfinder. So it kind of wrecks a photo. So I always like to try and take a photo with my flash off first, see how the quality looks, and then I will go back and turn it on if necessary. So I keep my flash off for the most part. The other thing is if you have an iPhone, you have the privilege of having live photos. Now, live photos are essentially a photograph that is taken where there's a small section of clip, a video clip also filmed. Now, it's kind of cool if you have a candid moment and you can catch some of the action leading up into the photo, but otherwise, I don't find it super beneficial if I'm taking posed photos. So for most of the time, I leave that function off because I don't always want a live photo. The other thing is you can set up a timer. All right, you can take a timer at 3 seconds or 10 seconds. Now, the way that I have my timer set up is that I will set it for a 10-second timer, and I will take 10 photos in a burst setting. So what that means is it'll take 10 photos after the 10-second mark, and it'll take 10 photos in succession. So it'll take 10 photos really rapidly close together, and you can see sort of a change in the image, which is kind of cool. All right, so the way that you hold or do a burst is that, and I'm just going to turn my timer off for now. The way you do a burst is you just touch and hold your setting. And you'll notice that at the bottom of my screen there, I have a marker that said 13. So what that meant is that I had 13 photos taken in that burst. When I go into my camera roll, I will see those 13 photos all lined up. All right, guys, so the last thing, or one of the last things, sorry, I want to just talk to you about is how to take a really quality shot. Now, one of my biggest tips to try is using the panorama function on your phone. I find that when I take a panoramic shot, I get a way better perspective of what I am actually viewing. So I'm going to show you an image of something I saw on a trip in Ireland this summer, and I'm going to show you that image prior to me taking a panoramic shot, followed by the image with a panoramic shot, and just how much more perspective you get with that panoramic feature. All right, so when you use the panoramic feature, just a reminder, it's a slide over to the right on your camera to use that feature. This first image here is without a panoramic feature. Obviously, it is not a bad photo, but you don't get quite as much perspective as what you see here. So obviously here I can get a 180 perspective of what I'm viewing. Macro photos are photos that we take close up. So what you'll see is there's two photos here, the photo of the flower and the photo of the pine cones that I've just taken around the house or the backyard here. And what you'll see is that they aren't great quality photos. However, you will notice that there is some aspect of that image in focus. So that's the thing to keep in mind. And the focal point of your image should be the part of the picture that you're really trying to capture. So keep that in mind as you take some macro or close-up photos. What I'm going to show you next is how to edit photos on your iPhone. Now, generally, when I take photos, I do not add any extra filters as I'm taking the photos because those are all things that can be added in after the fact. So I'm going to show you some of my biggest quick tips that I can give you in order to make a good quality photo on your iPhone. So when you click on an image, this image was taken on a trip that I went on this summer to Ireland. So I'm just going to show you some quick ways that we can improve this photo. So we click on that edit button in the top right corner, and you'll see that there's a few things that we can do. There's this top quick fix button here in the top corner, and it just enhances the photo. I find that I can usually do a similar job or a better job using my own sort of perspective. So what I do is on the bottom, you'll see a cropping icon. Okay, I will get rid of this black area here to make it so that it's just the image because I did take a screenshot. So there we go. I'm going to crop that image, click done. Oh, sorry. And then I can add filters. So again, these are filters that I could have added on as I was taking the photo, but it's not necessary to do that in advance. I can always do that later. This way I get to choose and take time choosing that filter after the fact. Sorry, I'm just going to go back and remove the filter just to show you a quality photo. So I generally don't like filters because they automatically make certain settings on your photo, and I like to do this on my own. So I will go into the light balance, and you can change things like exposure, highlights, shadows, and brightness. I find changing highlights helps to reduce, see as I scroll on the bottom here, it helps to reduce some of the really bright light in your photo. I like to reduce it just a little bit in order to get a good image there. Now, the next thing I'll do is I'll go into shadows, and I'll do the same, but usually in the opposite direction. I'll brighten up some of those shadows because if it's too dark, you lose some definition. Okay, this can also be done by changing the contrast of your photo. So if I go into contrast, you will see here that if you go to the left here, it gets very gray looking, and if you go to the right, you increase the contrast. So actually, I would say that the contrast in the photo remains to be pretty good. It was a nice sunny day, made it for a good contrast photo. Then some other things that you can do is look at the exposure. You'll see that exposure has a lot to do with brightness. Again, I would say that the lighting made for this photo to have a pretty good exposure. All right, then what I'll do is once I'm happy with my settings, now I would just say for you, I would suggest checking all of your settings. For example, this is brightness. Check all of your light settings and then move on to the color settings. So in the color settings, you can see that you can look at saturation, contrast, and cast. I find saturation does the best job at enhancing a photo. What you'll see is if I move to the left, it turns gray, which means there's no saturation. If I take it and move it to all the way to the right, you'll see that it's so saturated with color that it almost looks fake. Now, I don't want my photos to ever look fake, but I do sometimes want to enhance them a little bit. So here's sort of where I would say I would increase the saturation a little bit to make it look more like what I'm seeing in real life, and then I can kind of play with that. Again, I wouldn't go all the way saturated. It looks a little bit fake. Now, depending on the feel that you're trying to get with your photo, you may actually want to lower the saturation to make it a little bit maybe more gloomy or something along those lines. So I'm going to give my saturation level about in here somewhere. That to me looks pretty good. Okay, when I look at the contrast for my color contrast, again, you'll see that there just changes. You can see it more with the clouds and maybe some of the grass, how this changes. Again, I would say for your color contrast, you can increase that a little bit. And then cast. When we mess around with cast, you'll see it changes the color warmth of your photo. So over to the left is what we say is a cool photo, and over to the right is a warm photo. So I would say that because I don't want to change too much about this, I'm just going to leave it there. And again, I can change my black and white settings. I can change the intensity, neutrals, and whatnot, but I actually don't want it to be black and white. I would still like a color image. So I'm going to close that. Once I'm happy with all my settings, I am going to click done. Now, I can always go back and add extra filters. So if I wanted to add, say, a vivid filter or a warm filter after I've made those settings. But I do find that since I have increased the contrast or changed the contrast and increased some of the lighting on my photo, by adding the filters look more vivid and better anyways. So that's the best way to go about editing your photos. So that is what I think the best way to go about taking a photo is. Obviously, if I have, so for example, in this photo also, I didn't intend to get this person over here in that photo and maybe this person on this side in that photo. All right. I also maybe didn't find, if I find that, maybe in this case, I want to have lots of sky or something just to give a certain effect, I can change that and edit this as we go. All right, so I'm going to show you next a few ways to get creative with your photography, and then you'll be on your way outside taking photos of your own. I'd love to see you guys get creative when you go out and take photos today. So no matter what you see, or if you think that it is something that looks really, really cool, take a photo of it, and who knows, it might just turn out. So this photo here is one that I took again in Ireland of the Blarney Castle, and there was almost like a viewfinder to look at the Blarney Castle from a distance, and I thought this photo looked really cool. So I snapped a shot and it turned out pretty good. So take some really cool photos, and then you can also maybe try some augmented reality, which is the next little part of this video. All right, the last little thing that I want to show you is called augmented reality. So what you'll see here, oh, there's a dinosaur. All right, so this is a new part of technology that we have, and it is taking your surroundings and augmenting it or adding in an artificial reality. So what you'll see here is it looks like there's some dinosaurs coming after me. All right, so kind of crazy. You can get a variety of different augmented reality apps that you can download from your app store, whatever it is, and you'll see that you'll be able to, this one I picked dinosaurs because I kind of think dinosaurs are cool. And you can see that they're running around this little field here. All right, so kind of crazy. You can kind of walk around and see all the different dinosaurs, and this one's coming after me here. So pretty cool. Try it out if you want. Take some photos using augmented reality. Right now my dog, she's running with the dinosaurs. Anyways, that's it for now. What I would love to see is when you are done, I would love to see some of the photos that you've taken today. So snap a couple, send me one or two that you think were really top-notch photos, and send them to my email address that you can find on our website at PSC. All right, have a fun day. See you later.